Hello, everyone. In this video, we're going to show you how to submit an amended Maine individual income tax return, also known as an amended 1040 ME. For this particular example, we are going to demonstrate filing as a Maine resident. Before we begin, these videos use example numbers for the purpose of demonstrating how the Maine Tax Portal, also known as the portal, works as a system and the basic mechanics of how to use the portal. The videos do not constitute tax advice. If you have a question about how to file your own taxes, how to file taxes for your business, or how to file the taxes you are preparing on behalf of an individual or entity, you should seek assistance from a tax professional. Now back to the content of this video. It is important to understand that an amended 1040 ME uses the same form as an original 1040 ME. For the sake of this demonstration, we're filing as John Doe. In this scenario, John Doe already filed a 2022 1040 ME based on his full-time employment and received his refund. He later received a second W-2 in the mail from a part-time employer that he had forgotten about. John has already amended his federal individual income tax return to report this income, and now needs to amend his Maine individual income tax return. To accomplish this, John needs to submit a full, correct, and complete filing, not just a filing for the second W-2. This is a non-logged in activity, so we'll begin on the Maine Tax Portal homepage. Here, various options are organized into categories using separate panels. We can navigate to the top left panel, called Quick Links, and click the File a Return or Form hyperlink, or we can navigate to the top right panel, called Individuals, and click the File an Individual Return hyperlink. You may click either, both will bring you to the same page. From here, we are going to review the left panel, called Individual Returns, and select one of the first three options. Each of these hyperlinks will bring us to the form specific to the tax year indicated. Only the current tax year and previous 2 tax years will be available to file on the portal. So we'll click the hyperlink for the year for which we'd like to amend, in this case, 2022. And we're brought to the instructions page. As always, we're going to read any instructions thoroughly before we begin. And once we've done so, we'll click Next to proceed. On the next screen, we can indicate if we are a paid preparer. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to leave it as no and click Next to proceed. Same thing for the third-party designee. If that were applicable to our situation, we would fill it out. For the purposes of this demonstration, we'll leave it as no and click Next to continue. Next is the filing information screen. Required fields are indicated by red asterisks. And the blue circled I indicates that you may click that for more information on what is being asked for. And we can click out of that window to close it. We'd also like to draw your attention to the Save Draft button at the bottom of the screen. This can be used to save your progress at any time. You may also click Cancel if you want to stop the activity and not save your progress. Or you can navigate back to a previous page by clicking either the Previous button or by clicking on the previous page name in the blue bar at the top. So we'll fill out the required information on this screen, including our filing status, residency status, and our total number of exemptions. We will also indicate whether we have filed a 2022 federal individual income tax or 1040 return. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to say yes. Because we said yes to that question, we are also asked to indicate whether we itemized our deductions on our 2022 federal individual income tax or 1040 return. And for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to say no. Since we are filing to amend our previously filed 2022 Maine individual income tax return, we're going to select yes to the "Are we amending a previous return" question. And one more note before we continue on. For the purposes of this demo, we have set our filing status as single. If you use a different filing status, particularly married filing jointly, you may see additional questions not shown here. And we're going to click Next to proceed. Next, we're brought to the identification screen, where we'll fill out the required fields as applicable to us in our situation. So we'll enter in our Social Security number. And again, to confirm, our first and last name, our phone number, and our date of birth. And we'll click Next to continue. On the mailing address screen, we'll provide our mailing address. As always, addresses must be verified by the United States Postal Service. And we can do that by clicking the blue hyperlink at the bottom of the screen. Once we've verified the address, we'll click Next to proceed. Next, we're brought to the W-2 information page. Since we do have W-2 information to report, we'll click the Add W-2 hyperlink. And we'll fill out information as it appears on our W-2. And as before, required fields are indicated by red asterisks. But we will also fill out some of the optional fields as applicable to our W-2 information. And once we've done so, we'll click Add. And we can see that that W-2 has been added to the table below. Should we need to edit an entry that we've already done, we can click the pencil icon to do so. Or if we've made a mistake and would like to delete an entry, we can click the X. We can also repeat this process as many times as needed for all W-2s that we have. And since we do have a second W-2, we'll click that Add W-2 again and fill out the information from our second W-2. And we can see that that second W-2 has also been added to the table. And below the table are total W-2 Maine wages and total W-2 Maine income tax withheld are auto-calculated for us. We'll confirm that those look correct and click Next to proceed. If we had any 1099-R, we would enter in that information on the next screen. This doesn't apply to John Doe, so we'll move on. On the Maine income tax withheld summary, we can see the total Maine income tax withheld from both our W-2s and 1099-Rs auto-calculated for us. At this point, John has input all sources of Maine withholding, so we'll click Next to continue. On the next page, we'll provide our federal adjusted gross income as it appears on our federal return. And click Next to continue. On the Schedule 1A, we'll enter in any income addition modifications we have to report. For the purposes of this demonstration, we don't have any, so we'll click Next to proceed. And same for the Schedule 1S. If we had any income subtraction modifications to report, we would enter those here. While we navigate through these schedules, it's important to note that we should provide all schedules filed with our original return, even if we are not amending to modify that specific schedule. If the schedule is not completed on the amended return, it will be presumed that we are choosing to remove it voluntarily. And we'll click Next to continue on. On the next page, we reach our first milestone. Here we can see that our federal adjusted gross income and other information provided previously have led to an auto calculation of our tax. And we'll click Next to proceed. Next, we're brought to the Schedule A questions. Saying yes to these questions will direct us to fill out additional information on the following pages. Depending on your answers, your form may have additional pages between this screen here and the Schedule A non-refundable credits page that we will see next. We're going to leave all of these as no for the purposes of this demonstration and click Next to continue. And we're brought to the Schedule A non-refundable credits page. Since we have no non-refundable credits to report for this demonstration, we're going to click Next. Next is the Schedule A refundable credits page. And like we said during the Schedule 1A and 1S portion, it's important to note that we should provide all schedules filed with our original return, even though we're not amending to modify that particular schedule. And in this case, we have nothing to report for this demonstration, so we'll click Next to proceed. On the next page, we reach our second milestone. If we had previously entered non-refundable tax credits to be applied against our total tax, we would see those here, and our net tax has been auto-calculated for us. We did not claim any non-refundable credits, so our net tax is the same. We also did not claim any refundable tax credits, but if you have, those will be summarized on the next milestone. And we'll click Next to continue. On the next page, we are asked if we'd like to file for the Property Tax Fairness Credit and Sales Tax Fairness Credit, also known as PTFC and STFC. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to say no. And click Next to proceed. We've now reached our third milestone. Here we can see our withholding reiterated back to us based on the information provided earlier, as well as any refundable credits, PTFC or STFC. If you know you have made any estimated payments, extension payments, or real estate withholding payments for the tax year for which you are filing, or if you had an overpayment on the prior tax year that you opted to have carried forward and applied against this tax year's liability, you may enter the amount here. In this case, John did not make any of those payments, nor did he have a carry forward, so we're just going to click Next to continue. Next is the Schedule CP, where you can enter in any charitable contributions and park passes. There is a note on this screen that is very important for amended returns. If you are filing an amended return, the correct amount of your charitable contributions and park passes must agree with the total amounts shown on your original return. Contributions and park pass amounts cannot be changed on your amended return. Since we didn't have any charitable contributions and park passes on our original return, we'll click Next to continue. On our fourth milestone, we can see the results of our Schedule CP and input any use tax or sales tax on casual rentals that we have to report. Since we are filing an amended return, we'd like to point out the second line on this screen called If Amended, Overpayment on Original. Since we know that we had an overpayment on our original return, we'll enter that value here. And we'll click Next to continue. Next is the attachments page, where we can add any documentation in support of our filing. And we can do so by clicking the Add Attachment hyperlink. Selecting the type of file that we are attaching, and browsing for the file. And once we've selected the file, we can click OK. Since we are amending because changes were made to our federal individual income tax return, we are going to provide a copy of our 1040X or amended federal tax return. And we can repeat this process as many times as needed until all attachments have been added. If we do make a mistake in this process and accidentally add the wrong attachment, you can remove that attachment by clicking the Remove hyperlink. In this case, we have added the correct file, and that is the only supporting document that we're going to add for this demonstration, so we'll click Next to proceed. Next, we're brought to the balance screen where we can see any overpayment or amount due as calculated based on our return. For the purposes of this demonstration, we do have a balance due, and we are asked if we'd like to make a payment at this time. And we're going to say yes. And click Next to continue. On the payment screen, we'll provide our routing number, account number, and account number again to confirm. We will also indicate whether this is a checking or savings account. Our payment date will default to today, but you may future date this if the payment is not yet past due. And the payment amount will default to the total, but you can enter another amount if you so choose. Either way, you'll be asked to confirm the amount again. And for the purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to pay the full amount due with the return and click Next to proceed. Next, we're brought to the summary page. We'll review this information and confirm that it looks correct. And click Next to continue. On the declaration page, we are asked to check the box indicating that the return is true, correct, and complete, and enter in the first and last name of the person filing this return. And again, to confirm. And then we'll click Submit. We are asked to provide our email address twice to confirm. This will be reiterated back to us on the next page and can be used to search the submission at a later time. We will also check the box indicating that we are not a robot, and we might be asked to verify that we're not a robot with an activity such as this. And we'll click OK. That brings us to the confirmation screen, which again does reiterate back that email address that we provided, along with our confirmation code. As always, we encourage you to make note of this information for your records. That concludes our demonstration of how to submit an amended Maine individual income tax return. Thank you all for watching.